abyss. We can speak now to Madeleine McGivern, a charity consultant who worked as a human rights monitor in Israel, the West Bank and Gaza. Good morning to you, Madeleine.
Good morning, thanks for having me on.
Madeleine, it's a lot of language that's being used this morning, talking about this situation, particularly within Gaza, unprecedented, desperate. The BBC spoke to somebody who's there and they said, we're not animals, we're not in a zoo, we are human beings. From what you've heard, how bad is the situation for those civilians?
I think it's as bad as those words would suggest. The abyss that the UN warns of is well and truly upon them. Friends and former colleagues in Gaza that I've been speaking to are reporting the most dire humanitarian situation in terms of food, water, lack of fuel, lack of electricity, but also just their ultimate fear for their lives of their families. The situation for those desperately trying to provide medical care, hospital and ambulance workers being targeted as they go and try and rescue people, pull them out of buildings that have been bombed and collapsed. It's absolutely horrendous what I'm hearing. The numbers, I've actually lost track of the numbers of really brutal and horrific videos that I've seen of children who have been killed in the bombs being carried out of buildings, mothers sobbing uncontrollably for their families that they've lost. And it's happening all up and down the Gaza Strip, which, of course, just to reiterate, is a tiny place. It's the size of the Isle of Wight, and there's 2.3 million people living there. And, it's being reported that Israel has said 1 million people, please leave your homes and go south. Well, just to be very clear, those people who are leaving their homes are being bombed. I've read this morning of a report of 70 people killed in a convoy travelling from the north of the Strip to the south. I've also seen footage of Rafah, which is the most southern point in Gaza, right on the Egypt border, with houses being bombed there and 12 members of an entire family being killed there. So there really is no safe place to go. And it's as desperate as the words that we're hearing would imply, unprecedented. And if there is no safe place to go, no safe way to exit, when you know that Israel has told Palestinians to leave Gaza now, is it realistic? No, it's absolutely completely unrealistic. The only people that would allow or would be in the position to allow Palestinians to leave are Israel, and they've made it very clear that nothing is going in and nothing is going out. That includes people, that includes food, that includes water. Before this escalation, because I think it's really important to remember this is an escalation of an existing conflict. This isn't happening in isolation. This is part of conflict that's been going on for 75 years. The occupation of Palestine has been going on for that long. It's illegal under international law. And before this particular round of violence, 95% of the water coming out of taps in Gaza wasn't drinkable. 70% of people there, children, women, families, already dependent on food aid. Israel already controlled the fuel supply and electricity supply into Gaza, and all of that has been cut off. The world has been told that that's happening. Israel has told the world, we are going to starve this population. We are going to have the firmest possible siege we possibly can. And the UK government and many other Western governments around the world are not only letting this happen, they're supporting it. And I think that's why we're seeing thousands and thousands and thousands of people all over the world coming out to say, not in our name, this can't happen again. This level of atrocity, this level of horror.
Am I right in saying that nearly 50% of the population in Gaza are under 18?
You are right. Yeah, so over 1 million children in Gaza, all of which will have experienced previous rounds of bombing and attacks and bombardments. A friend of mine who I used to work with in Gaza says he's survived 5 wars now. He says on his journey from the north to the south of Gaza yesterday, he's never seen death or destruction, an unprecedented level of it already. So many of these people are under 18, are children. We know yesterday, I think it was over 740 children had already been killed. Whatever your politics, whatever your knowledge of the situation before, the last week and before it kind of came onto our news channels the way it has done, I would really be so hopeful that the vast, vast majority of people don't believe that a child in any circumstances deserves what is happening to the children of Gaza.
In terms of a timeline and how this operation will move forward or escalate, and these orders for people within the north to move to the south. Is it any safer in the south?
No, that's the cruelty of the order. People who are moving from the north to the south are reporting that they're being hit by airstrikes as they're moving. Some of the most southern points in Gaza have already been bombed. They were before the order came, and they have been since. I can't reiterate enough how there is no safe place. A friend of mine that's moved from the north to the south, the home he's gone to be in has already been partially damaged, and a building next to his, the new one that he's in the inverted commas safer place, was completely flattened yesterday. And this morning he's been in touch to say that 11 people were killed, 2 brothers and all of their children. And that's in the space that Israel are telling the civilian population to move to.
Clearly people are trying to leave, but from what we understand, there are people who feel that it's safer to stay put. In one quote said that they felt that it would be more dignified to stay in their homes. What is the mood in terms of people who you've been speaking to? How do people feel?
It's a very strange combination of utterly desperate, but also kind of, as you mentioned, that's strength. No, we are staying in our homes. Many, many people in Gaza are already refugees from previous wars, either in 1948, when the Nakba happened and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were forced to flee their homes. And then again in 1967. Throughout the years, there have been millions of refugees, Palestinian refugees already. And so many people in Gaza will already hold a registration card that says they're a refugee. They don't have anywhere else to go. And, I'm hearing that lots of people are phoning relatives, in the diaspora, in other parts of Palestine, the West Bank and in Jerusalem, and saying goodbye, preparing for their fate. Because they know this isn't new for them in terms of they know the lack of respect given to their lives as Palestinians. They've seen countless rounds of violence against them. They've seen the murder of their mothers, fathers, children, and no one stepping in to stop it. This is a bit more unprecedented because of the level of active support that the actions of the Israeli government are being greeted with in the West. And I'm really careful to draw the distinction between the Israeli government, because there are many Israelis who I met when I worked there who have campaigned for an end to Israel's illegal occupation of Palestine, because they know that while the occupation continues and while international law is not upheld, there will be no peace for anyone in the region, and that includes them, and that includes, the million Palestinian children that we're talking about facing their death this morning.
We were discussing earlier in the programme, the term collective punishment, the fact that this is legal. How does that make you feel? You're seeing the results of this on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's illegal under international law to punish a civilian population for the acts of, the military body that they may or may not want to associate themselves with. And in terms of how it makes it's heartbreaking. I mean, I feel like a bit of humanity is disappearing in front of our very eyes. And I think it's so important that regardless of whether or not people feel they fully understand the situation, they can be very clear that if they think all human life is equal, every child, woman and man that is a civilian trying to go about their day-to-day lives, trying to do what we all want to do, be happy, be safe, be with our families, be with our friends. If you feel that is the case and you don't draw a distinction between one type of human being and another, then what you're seeing right now should make you very, very frightened. This is kind of unprecedented in terms of the scale and the openness with which this collective punishment is being carried out. And I really hope that in covering it, and very grateful for you having me on and covering these stories, because people really need to know what is happening so that they can make a choice to say whether or not they think this is something that should happen in this time. With all the access to information that we have now, it's really crucial that this is the time we say enough is enough. We can't do this to humanity. We can't do this to people. And we want peace for everyone in the region. We want peace for everyone that calls Palestine and Israel their homes.
Madeleine, thank you so much for your time this morning. Great to chat to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Madeleine McGivern, a charity consultant who worked as a human rights monitor in Israel, the West Bank and Gaza. It is 17 minutes past 9.
Rugby World Cup 2023 on 5.